2 minutes after the hour, so let me pause my music.
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. I'm not sure how many people are here today, but it looks like a lot. I am so happy to see all of these lovely faces. Please feel free to join us on camera or stay off camera. Use this as your time to experience some enlightenment, hear from some thought leaders on some topics that are very, very relevant right now. And as we get started, before Princess and I introduce ourselves, I would love to just actually drop this message in the chat just to get your energy going. If you could just drop in the chat where you are dialing in from, joining us from, and drop one or two words that describe how you feel today. I am actually here in Atlanta, Georgia, so I'm going to start this by typing in the chat as well. I'm in Atlanta, and I am excited, but also emotional, in sort of a down kind of way. Obviously, the shooting, the school shooting that took place yesterday is heavy on my mind and heart. I'm sure it's heavy on many of your minds, hearts. I see some people saying they feel defeated. And so, we will recognize and honor those emotions, because that is what we're supposed to do as humans, is recognize and honor our emotions. And yeah, please keep dropping in the chat how you feel today. Let me make sure I let folks in. And understand that you're here to receive some inspiration and enlightenment. And that is really our goal today, to have an inspiring conversation that will leave you with some thought-provoking feelings and hopefully elevate your mood, particularly after we do our meditation at the end of this session. Elevate your mood from anything that represents anxiety or sadness or frustration. Hopefully we are able to elevate that to higher states. So with that being said, thank you so much for being here today. Breaking bad agreements in the workplace. Princess is a good friend of mine that I have known since 1996, dating us a little bit. We went to high school together, and we connected over conversations like this. We get together and we talk about business, we talk about life. Princess is a very inspirational business owner. She actually, after having I'll tell you a little fun fact about Princess. After having one conversation with her, I was motivated to start my own website because that's just the kind of energy that she has. And anyone that knows her, I'm sure, can affirm to that. My name is Shawntà Hooks. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, but I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the owner of Mindful Culture Creators. I consider myself a mindset change enthusiast, a meditation expert, a speaker, an influencer, and really just an all-around positive person. I have a corporate job. I work as a vice president of sales process surveillance for Synchrony Financial. And I stepped into this passion of learning and teaching and helping others understand mindfulness and meditation, particularly in the workplace, because it's so necessary today. Princess, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Princess Kiasha Castleberry. Yes, that is my real name. And I am originally from Detroit's West Side. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I am the founder of Castle Risk Management HR Consulting. Crazy fun fact is that I am also a professional makeup artist. So you will see this skin flawless, these eyebrows perfect, and these lips popping at all times. 20 years, for 20 years, I can't believe it. I have worked as a global risk management professional and also as an HR leader. And I specialize in enterprise risk management, wellness. I've worked in business continuity and legislative compliance. I am also a certified instructional designer. I speak Spanish fluently, so podemos hablar en español si quieres. And I am the epitome.
Qué bueno.
Hey. And I am the epitome of bringing your whole self to work. I'm grown, I'm fearless, and I just hope to impart some of my spirit, some of what my mother taught me, some of what I have picked up from so many of the men and women on this call today. Like Shawntà mentioned, we graduated from the same high school, Renaissance High School in Detroit, Michigan, one of the best high schools in the whole country. Don't ask me, ask US Weekly and World Report. Right. Last year, we reconnected because we found that we were both teaching about imposter syndrome. Shawntà was doing this wonderful presentation on the mindful imposter. And I was doing something really that I didn't even realize was about breaking bad agreements. It was called Fake It Until You Make It. But what if you don't make it? And it was talking about this whole concept of being an imposter and where those feelings really come from. And we really believe, both of us connected over the idea that we are not imposters, right? We are triggered by happenings and circumstances in our personal lives, in our global societal lives, and in our work lives. So that is a little bit about me. I know Shawntà shared some about herself, and I think we're just gonna jump into this.
Yeah, no, and again, welcome to everyone that has continued to join. Just as an FYI, this session is being recorded. We'll make sure we get the recording out to you guys, and make sure you share it. Share it with others. Princess and I are both business owners, and part of us having this session today is to not really just talk about our businesses, but share our value and share our impact. Because it's just so necessary in this world today. So with that being said, neither of us are healthcare providers. So this session is meant to be educational, but we will be touching on some heavy topics. So if you get triggered, recognize those emotions and rest with them, and really just see where they take you. So as I said earlier, if you can mute your line, if you're not talking, we're getting just a little bit of feedback there. So if you wouldn't mind just muting your line if you're not talking. But as we said, Princess and I we connected over our passions related to risk management, mindfulness, wellness, which is, some interesting connections. You often don't think about the connection between risk management and wellness. And I'm someone that has actually worked in risk management for the majority of my 20-year career. But there is a really interesting connection. So I'm going to start our first question off to Princess. Princess, tell us a little bit about, how you would describe the connections between mindfulness, wellness, and the workplace.
Sure. And first, I want to make sure you all can see in the chat that we've included a workbook, and we might have to repost that. So look to the chat for us to share a workbook that you can download that has the notes for this section. Because I don't want you writing down a bunch of notes. I want you to be dialed in. So I took the notes for you. They're in the book. But I think, when I think about this connection between wellness and risk management, I think that historically in the workplace, it was taboo actually to discuss mindfulness and wellness, because one of the original workplace agreements was that you had to leave your personal life at home and leave your feelings at home. Like it's almost like a separation of church and state. But as people started to grow accustomed to this notion that being professional meant that you didn't show your emotions, that turned into a problematic state of things, because the way we would experience emotion in the workplace sometimes was because a boss was yelling at somebody, right? So we were allowing certain emotions in, right? We were allowing anger into the workplace, but we weren't allowing ourselves to bring in what was happening in our home lives, the things that we saw in the news, tragedies like the ones we're experiencing now. One of the reasons we've grown so desensitized to them is because they've been happening our whole lives. And for some of us, we've experienced these things, very close in our own neighborhoods and in our own families. So not being able to bring yourself to work fully has always been problematic. But what happens in reality with people is that we're not really, really good at compartmentalizing. And then people start to bring their wellness, their spirituality, their attitudes, and their experiences into the workplace. And that starts to shape how we show up as leaders, the policies that we make, the decisions that we make. And it starts to shape the workplace culture. Now, when you think about those things, culture, policy, design, how we treat our customers, all those interactions start to shape what I call our risk appetite and our tolerance. It starts to shape our risk culture, whether we're adverse, whether we're tolerant to different ideas and new products and innovation and design. And so ultimately, this idea of wellness and people's wholeness starts to creep into how we identify our talent, it creeps into our growth potential, and it affects our profitability. And we know as business women and men on this call, nothing matters more, right, than the bottom line. And so because of this tie to financial performance, for the past decade, we've seen this real shift and this moving in focus towards our wellness and our well-being in the workplace. And we've been raising our awareness to these concepts like healthy eating and physical fitness, talking about imposter experience and all those feelings. And I really do believe that the pandemic just poured gasoline on all of that and just accelerated all of that work. And so, you know, when I think about these connections, I mean, they're really inextricably linked, because people's wellness impact business, and that is a risk to the organization.
Absolutely. Wonderful answer. And please show your reactions using the emoticons. Feel free to drop in the chat any thoughts or questions that you may have. We are going to have some question and answer time at the end of this. But no, what you nailed it, Princess. Well workers are more productive, innovative, creative workers. And that wasn't something that I understood at all. Until literally about maybe 5 years ago is when it started to kind of make sense in terms of, you know, really understanding how our awareness, our ability to be aware, not just aware of ourselves, but aware of others, how that impacts our hiring decisions, how that impacts how we show up at work, how it impacts how we show up in a meeting. And so I'm actually going to take a quick pause because I like to start meetings off like this with centering, right? You know, and this is a practice that you can actually take into your workplaces before you start meetings, particularly meetings that require a lot of thinking, that require brainstorming, that require ideation or creativity. Start the meeting with someone guiding the audience or the meeting participants in mindful breathing, right? You can call it meditation, you can call it mindfulness, you can call it breathing exercises, whatever you think resonates culturally within your workplace, but we're gonna do that collectively today. And so as we do this, you don't need to do anything, you don't need to move anywhere. What we're going to do is just simply take 3 deep cleansing breaths together collectively to clear the channel. And what I mean by that is it's 11:14 Eastern Standard Time. If you're like me, you're coming from a meeting or you have a meeting after this, right? And so your mind may be in one of those 2 places, before where you came from or where you have to go. So what we're going to do collectively is just take 3 deep cleansing breaths to bring us to this present moment so that you get the most out of this next 45 minutes with us today. So go ahead, sit back in your chair, wherever you're sitting. I invite you to close your eyes. And let's just take 3 deep breaths in through the nose and out the mouth collectively. First breath, breathing in. Maybe feeling the rise, the expansion of your chest, of your abdomen. Exhaling through the mouth. Perhaps feeling tension. Slowly release from the shoulders, from the face. So we take our second breath in through the nose. Maybe noticing something new about breathing. Perhaps the feeling of air passing through your mouth as you exhale. As we take our last and third deep breath in through the nose, the biggest breath that you've taken today. Releasing through the mouth. And if you close your eyes, I invite you to open your eyes and understand that that's not taboo what we just did, right? What we just did is we took 3 deep breaths together to bring us and our attention to the present moment. And science tells us that when we're in the present moment, we're more focused. So take that with you into your workplaces and try to make it a habit so that as you engage, as you have planning sessions, PI sessions, technology sessions, HR sessions, right? It doesn't matter the discipline. You want people to show up in the moment, present, focused, aware, and connected. So, Princess, you know, as we sort of bonded over this topic of agreements, the catalyst for this session, you know, and for the inspiration rather for this session was the book, The 4 Agreements. which both of us have read. I see some familiar faces in the audience, my cousin Shamika and some others. So plenty of people I know that are familiar with this book. If you're not familiar with the Four Agreements, it is a fantastic book based on Toltec wisdom. And essentially, to keep the description brief, the author discusses four agreements that if we sort of center our lives around, and sort of honor and agree to these four things, then our life will be filled with greater moments of peace, joy, happiness, calm, less reaction to stress and trauma and anxiety. And those four agreements are: don't take it personal, don't make assumptions, honor your word, and always do your best. Right. And so as we thought about, that book, and we talked about what it meant to us both individually, we identified this idea that we're always making agreements in life. Right. Those are agreements that I made. I agree with the book. And so those are agreements that I made subsequent to reading that book. However, lots of agreements I've made over the course of my life that I'm actually changing now, that I'm learning because of my awareness, they no longer serve me because they were agreements that were made with a fear-based mindset. And so we're actually going to talk about three of those agreements today. The first one being this agreement that we are often reared or raised with, that as people of color or as women or as any marginalized community, we have to work twice as hard, arrive and show up early, stay late, just to receive equal recognition and award to white male counterparts, or really any counterpart that is the dominating force of the culture. So Princess, first question that I have for you is, what are your perspectives on this? Let's, just talk to the audience about how this agreement has actually served you and how you have chosen to reframe it.
Thank you. This is probably, I think, one of the most important topics, because I like to start with the fact that these agreements, like Shawntà just described, these are learned rules, and these are learned familial rules and societal rules that we agree to them. We allow them to govern our thinking, to dominate our thought life, and to really control our behavior change, right? And so I first heard this agreement, okay, I'm using my air quotes now, this bad agreement, that as a Black woman, I was destined to work twice as hard, arrive early, stay way later, just for equal or sometimes less treatment. That's exactly how it was said to me, and that I had to do these things. And when I sat and really thought about it, right, because that's the first part of this, is just to ask yourself, where did this agreement come from? When I thought about that, it came from my grandmother. That was the first time I had ever heard someone say that, but it was not the last. And I had to think about that. I'm a Black woman that was born in 1979. My grandmother is a Black woman, and I was born in Detroit. My grandmother is a Black woman that was born in 1933 in Mississippi. Now, what was fueling my grandmother, and not just my grandmother, but my mother repeated these things to me. Then when I got around my friends in college, my friends started to repeat these things to me because they had learned it from their parents and their grandparents. And when I entered the workplace, more mature, more senior Black colleagues would literally pull me to the side and tell me and warn me, you have to work twice as hard. You have to be here earlier than everybody. Don't let them see you slipping. All these things. I was like, one thing after the next, it was like heaped on me that I was not going to be able to ever have a misstep, that I was always going to have to be perfect. And I took that into my psyche. I came into the workplace with that. So I agreed. I believe that I agreed with it. And I'm not here to take away from anybody's lived experience. When we look at the root of where did that come from, my 33-year-old my 1933 born grandmother had seen and experienced some horrific atrocities, with her own two eyes. She had lived through these things, and she brought that. She had real fear. She had fear induced by experience. And so she carried these things forward. As a lot of my friends that are on this call that are part of the LGBTQIA community, their friends and their families carried these experiences forward, and they were told the same things. And so what happened to me in the workplace, I got into my very first job. I worked for a major insurance brokerage firm, and I was doing everything. I was killing it, and I was killing myself. I was coming real early. I was staying late. I was dressing the part, and I was trying to, be all I could be. And I had a managing director. It was a woman. And there's somebody on this call too that had an encounter with that same woman. And one day she was asking me about how I became interested in this field of risk management. And I was telling her about my internships and different experiences I had had and being in the Inroads program and being recruited to the company. And she looked me square in my face and she said to me, "You don't look like a risk manager." That was my real experience. I was 22 years old.
And how crushing was that?
Ooh.
22, if everyone, I'm guessing that most of the people here are older than 22. But
Right.
Can you imagine being a 22-year-old new professional and being told something like that? How did that make you feel, Princess?
I mean, I gasped, I took a deep breath, and because everybody here who knows me knows I'm a little sassy, got a little spark to me. And so that's not new. I was born with that. My mother raised me with that. And so I took that in and it hurt at first. And I looked back at her and I said, I don't look like a risk manager. And you know what I said? I said, but I think like one. I think like one. Man. And that was my first time actually breaking an agreement. I created an immediate boundary. And then something else that I did in that same moment, I asked her, and this was a scary question to ask a managing director because she could have fired me. I was an at-will employee. And I looked at her and I said, "What are you trying to accomplish by asking me that?" Because see, I knew it, right? My grandmother had already warned me, they're gonna try to knock you down. And so that's one of the scariest things is when you've been taught of fear and raised in fear-based thinking, and then you meet somebody that confirms it.
Right.
And it makes you almost want to give up on people that look like that. She was a white woman. She was pretty. She was blonde hair, blue-eyed. And here's the funny thing. If I had given up on that demographic of people, one of the people that's on this call right now, I won't embarrass her or calling her name out, but she's a tall, beautiful white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. And she is my fiercest, most staunch supporter. So if I would have let that agreement break my spirit, instead of breaking that agreement, I might not have the relationship I have with one of my best friends and somebody I consider my sister today. She's smiling, so she knows it's her. Wave, hey, cuteness. And so I think about that. And the reality that I had to work twice as hard, it was just wrong. It was wrong. And so I broke that agreement. And what I started to do instead was focus on my contributions. And flat out, I got the hell up out of there because that just wasn't the place for me. I'm about to cry thinking about it. But I'm happy that I continued on because I built a wonderful career as a risk manager for 20 years. I am a risk manager.
Absolutely. You're more than a risk manager. You're a coach, you're a leader, you're a thought leader. And that, if I could just add on to what Princess said, this thought process, while it came from her, grandmother that was born in, I think you said the 1930s, that idea that we as Black people or we as minorities or we as women have to work twice as hard to get half as much is still relevant. I literally heard a 50 plus year old Black man say that to a group of younger Black professionals 2 weeks ago. And literally when I heard him say it, I wanted to be like, please come to my session next, in 2 weeks. We're actually going to be debunking that myth. And I've thought a lot about it, really being confronted in that way with this idea. And the reality is that as professionals, the idea and the focus should always be on outcome, impact, and efficiency, right? If you are working hard to get, if you're working twice as hard to get half as much, that's just not an efficient model, right? If your car has to work twice as hard to get half of where it needs to go, that car is not going to last very long, right? And so in life, and from my perspective, I have always, as a young professional and as an older professional, 20 years in the game, have always chosen to focus on efficiency and impact. And I was able to actually accelerate my career working in public accounting. I started my career in one of the most grueling professions that you can. Shout out to all the PwC and E&Y, Deloitte. I see my big four peeps on the line here today. And we all know what busy season is and what it means to have to work a minimum of 55 hours a week. And because I was raised with people that, really instilled in me confidence and an ability to stand up for myself, I was able to set boundaries around that, even as a new professional, knowing that my worth will not be in me just sitting here twiddling my thumbs at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, just because everyone else is doing it. I'm going to figure out a way to navigate this so that I don't have to do that, so that I can still spend time with my family and my friends, and I can still do well at my job. And I was promoted in 2 years, against people that were literally working harder than me. Right. And so I actually heard someone through a leadership institute that I'm affiliated with say last week, if your brand is based on your hard work, then you're kind of behind the game. Right. Your brand in corporate America, in life and organizations, no matter what you do, hard work is fine. And we certainly want to honor work ethic, that there's a value in working hard. There's a value in staying late, if that's what you choose to do. But that shouldn't be what you're known for. You should be known for your outcome. You should be known for your impact. And you should be known for your ability to stand up for yourself and be assertive and make decisions that are rooted in what you want out of life, and not rooted in someone telling you that you're inferior because of the way you look. And certainly not rooted in this desire to seek perfection, because peace and perfection cannot coexist together. So I could go all day, on these kind of toxic topics, but I want to
get her off that box.
Once I get going, it's hard for me to stop. So I'm going to move us along, because we got 2 more agreements, and I want to make sure we do save time at the end, at least 5 minutes, to do a longer collective mindfulness exercise together. But let's talk about our second agreement. Princess, when we were preparing for this session, you really resonated with this agreement that in the workplace, you have to pay your dues and sort of honor the suffering of those that advanced before us, our elders in the workplace, our mentors. We have to pay our dues, and we have to work just as hard as them and jump through all the hoops that they jump through to get ahead. And so let's talk a little bit about, agreements that we make related to age, right? And how we subconsciously judge other employees that are younger than us or older than us. Talk to us about your experience with entitlement, age, benefit, and maybe even some of the benefits of paying your dues. What are some of the benefits of those mentalities, and how is culture shifting and requiring us to reframe our thinking in this area?
Perfect. So first off, the ism that I have experienced the most in the workplace is ageism. Okay. I started my career right out of college, right? And I started the way a lot of people start in this industry, in the brokerage world, but I didn't stay in that world. It just wasn't for me. I didn't stay on that side of the business for very long. I worked on that side for 2 years. And so I crossed over and got my first job in corporate risk management very early in my career. Most people that cross over into corporate risk management typically come into that space with 8 to 10 years experience, because those in-house corporate teams are usually very small and have a very wide range of responsibility, right? But I was able to, secure a position. I interviewed fairly. I wasn't the only candidate. I got the job fair and square. And so I found myself in these spaces where I was around a lot of people that were more senior to me. So one of the ways I use this sort of paying your dues mentality to my advantage, I made that agreement because initially it was serving me well to be sort of the new kid on the block. It was, I was fresh. I was young and I was a sponge. I had lots of ideas to learn. I had an opportunity to work with risk managers and attorneys and tax professionals and accountants. And I was just wanting to always understand how their functions, how risk was embedded in their functions and how these ideas and things were connected. And so for a really, really short period, it served me well. But then when I started to realize that, there's all these generational differences that exist in our society and all that stuff. We don't have to get into that because that's all really well documented. You can read 1,000 studies about the difference between the silent generation and the boomers and the this and the that. But historically, as a society, we have valued experience, wisdom, and age up to a certain point. And I say that because in this country, we love to disregard young people and old people, right? We like the people in the middle who can work a whole lot and make us a lot of money. That's just facts.
Right.
And when past generations were more dominant in the workplace, because we understand now that the millennials and the younger generations, we dominate the workforce right now because of our age. And when past generations, though, were more dominant in the workforce, they seem to have to experience a lot more bootstrapping, right? They had to build themselves up. One thing that you hear in my industry a lot is like, I worked myself up from the mailroom and now I'm a vice president of risk consulting or whatever. And it's like, well, damn, they had you doing the mail. You had a degree in accounting. But people have those types of experiences, that I walked 6 miles in the snow type of experience. And then you have us Zennials and millennials coming into the workplace. And there was this notion heaped upon us that we had to wait and we had to pay our dues in a real, undue sort of way. And the irony is that we are the first generation of people that have had widespread personal technology that's, personally accessible to us in our homes, in our pockets. We're the first generation. I had an email address since I was 15, right? I had my own personal computer since I was 15 years old. We're the first generation with that. And companies readily accept the notion that technology will accelerate and advance everything except the careers of a young person. That just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. And so when I came in and I was benefiting from technology, from all this advancement, from having literal books, encyclopedias, catalogs, frameworks at my fingertip with the click of a Google search, I could have what you learned over 5 years. There was this resentment that built up in the workplace. And there were some old agreements that the older generation had made too, that I'm going to make these young people go through what I went through because that's the way to do it. And what was happening was this clash, and we got labeled as bratty, as entitled, as wanting to grow too fast, wanting too much. And this happened, I'll tell this super tiny short story, is that I had in 2009, I had just earned my master's degree in training and development. I knew I had the gift of gab, and I knew I loved to teach and be in front of people. And I was super excited, got this master's degree. Next thing that pops up on our internal job search was an instructional design position. And I wanted that job so badly. My bosses were supporting me. I got to the top of 3 rounds of interviewing before the HR recruiter actually did a little bit of background and realized that if she had given me that job, I was the top candidate and I was the most educated of the candidates. If she had given me that job, it would require me to skip 2 pay grades, and they took me out of the process very abruptly. I was not allowed to interview or be in consideration for the job because of an antiquated policy related to not jumping too many pay grades. And I was consoled by you're doing really well for somebody your age. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the damn point. No, that's not what I wanted. And here's the irony. The irony is that I retreated back to my world and risk management, and I reframed it by just continuing to teach in that space and teach in a real creative, innovative way. And I became a very highly sought after trainer, right? Yeah. So much so that the company let me lead several major initiatives centered around training, but I never got the job in instructional design. How about that? And here's the funny part. Yeah. Super little, look, I'm gonna let it go off my soapbox. But here's the funny part. Now today, everybody wants to hire me at 42. Let me tell you something. At 24, I had a whole lot more energy. I'm so surly and sarcastic now. You should have got that young princess. Go ahead, Shawntà.
I think I like all the princesses. I've seen all the versions, so I appreciate all of them. But one thing that I didn't mean to interrupt, but as you were talking, is this idea of risk management, right? And I think that a lot of organizations do not understand the risk that they face by continuing to hold on to these antiquated ideals, right? We see what's happening in the workplace. Right. I work in the finance space, and the talk is always around fintechs, right? And technology, and how technology is literally changing the world at paces that we've never seen before. And to your point, it is enabling younger people or enabling people to do bigger, have greater scopes, have greater knowledge. They literally, you don't have to read an encyclopedia, cover to cover. You have information at your fingertips, right? And we all know that, it's the young people that have the vision, right? As someone that is really passionate about mindfulness and meditation, part of mindfulness is actually developing an ability to be a visionary thinker, where you can see future outcomes before they happen. And that is something that younger people, younger demographics, statistically, scientifically, they're able to tap into that simply because of the way that they're wired, right? And so, to sort of stifle that or mislabel that way of thinking or that behavior as being entitled, right? It's a risk, right? Everyone has the choice to believe what they want to believe, to adopt whatever ideals and culture that they want to adopt, but understand the risk associated with, having this sort of bootstrap culture, this mentality where you sort of put down and demean younger demographics and strip them from their ability to be confident and to be visionary. Certainly, hard work and, proving yourself through, again, your impact and your outcome is necessary. Entitlement is, I haven't earned it yet, right? Entitlement is not, I'm old, I'm too young. It's, I haven't earned it yet. There are plenty of young people that earn their position, before older demographics, simply because they're superstars. They're rock stars. And so, part of, one of the reasons that I like to really talk about mindfulness and meditation in the workplace is to be aware of the ego, right? How much is our decision to criticize or to, label someone as entitled simply because of their age? How much of that is tied to our ego? Right? How much of that is tied to our dissatisfaction with where we are in our career because we wanted to make it to a certain place? We had a certain expectation that perhaps we didn't meet yet, right? How much of that is tied to the ego in terms of us one-upping, someone or one-downing someone? Wisdom plus courage prevents you from, getting into this risk management space. And so we certainly want to honor the wisdom that comes with time and experience, but you are really doing your organization a disservice if you don't honor the courage that often comes inherently with younger demographics.
Yes,
So,
I totally agree.
yeah.
And so Shawntà, you, and I don't know, as you're talking, you're glitching a little bit.
Okay.
So we might have you like turn your camera off and turn it back on.
Okay.
Just for internet's sake, bandwidth sake. Yep. And so the question I wanted to ask you, I've been waiting to ask this question all day, is that you had a lot of thoughts as we prepare for this around authenticity and how fitting in or assimilating in the workplace is often done at the expense of our authenticity, and how this is something that spans various demographics. This is not just related to people of color, but specifically, can you share some of the agreements that you made in the workplace that might have challenged your authenticity, and how did you benefit from that, and how are you reframing it and using your authenticity as an accelerator versus as a detriment to your health?
Yeah, no, I love that question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can now. Yep, it's better.
Okay, awesome. So authenticity in the workplace is an interesting topic because oftentimes organizations want us to be authentic, but they really have an idea of what that authenticity looks like. And, over the course of my career, it hasn't always been me, right? It hasn't always been, a Black woman that is from inner city Detroit, Michigan, that loves hip hop, that, likes to wear head wraps and likes to change her hair up, in different styles and braids and wigs and short hair and long hair, right? That is all a part of who I am authentically. And that alone allows me to tap into my creativity, because authenticity is the thing that leads you to your creativity. It's the thing that leads you to innovation. And so, for me, I always struggled, especially earlier in my career, with hair. Right? Is this hairstyle, having to constantly question whether or not my hairstyle was professional, actually, deciding to keep my hair a certain way for many, many, many years, it's really suppressing a side of me that is really creative because I wanted to fit in, right? Because I thought that's what I needed to do to fit in. And that goes with style, the way I dressed at work. It even taps into, Princess and I were having this conversation yesterday. It even goes into having gone to a historically Black college, right? And going to a historically Black college that is actually quite conservative. And in many ways, really encouraged young Black people to assimilate in the workplace. Right. Again, I don't blame or fault them for that ideology, because it was a protection. Right. It was an ideology that was rooted in protecting us and ensuring that we did excel at a time where maybe it was necessary. But I'm just so happy that we're in a space now where we can show up as our authentic selves. COVID, obviously the pandemic played a role in that, with us being in virtual environments. I see people wearing head wraps at work now. I see people really embracing, maybe they have tattoos, maybe they have t-shirts that they want to share, in statement. I see all of these amazing things that allow people to just really come as they are in the workplace. And so a quote that I love is actually a quote that I got from Jim Carrey, from a commencement speech that he did several years ago. And when I heard this quote, it made me stand up in my, stand up in my seat. Now, I want to pause, make sure I'm being heard okay, right? You can hear me okay. Okay, awesome. The quote is, "Your desire to blend in will make you invisible in this world. Your desire to blend in will make you invisible in this world. Risk being seen in all your glory." Risk being seen in all your glory. And it wasn't until I started to embrace that quote, really being seen in all my glory, telling my story, telling my father's story, sharing that I'm from Detroit, being able to say, if someone says I'm from Detroit too, being able to see really, really proudly, "What up though?" Because that's what we say in Detroit when we greet each other, right? That's not offensive. It's not unprofessional. I'm not, doing anything that taints my brand or my image. I am representing a part of me that represents who I am. And as organizations, we should want our people to be that way, because it's profitable. Right. It wasn't until I tapped into my authenticity that I started to actually think of thoughts in my job, think of thoughts that were solving big problems, right? Taking us away from solving things inefficiently with micro solutions. Let's solve this problem by creating a technology solution, an individual technology solution for each problem. And, saying, hey, why are we doing it like that? Why don't we connect this system to this system? Now we have a macro solution that's much more efficient and effective. Right. That was an idea that I got to, a creative idea that I got to, because I stepped into my authenticity, because I started to bring my full self to work, because I started meditating. So give yourself permission to be curious about who you are and what your authenticity means to you, and wear it proudly and with courage in the workplace, and watch yourself and your bottom line and the bottom line of your organization soar.
That's what I'm talking about. And you just said something really, really important, that allow yourself to be curious about yourself, right? To start exploring yourself and bringing that into the workplace. And here's another piece of how, because I've gone through that. And then like I said, I have so many people on this call from so many different identities, because we're talking about our experiences, obviously, as Black women in the workplace. But I have some of my LGBTQIA friends here. I have friends here that are differently abled, and they go through this same thing too, of not being able to be authentic. I know somebody right now, they're not on this call, that works in one of my client workplaces, that has two impairments, and nobody knows it. And I just beg them to share, because it would be so powerful and enlightening to the workforce, right? But people have to give themselves to be permission to be curious. And another thing we have to permit is that we will not be offended by people's curiosity. That's another real bad agreement. I would just, again, speak from my own perspective. Because I have had stupid stuff happen. I've had people literally try to touch my hair. Guess what? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let me just make that the Black PSA. Don't touch our hair. I won't touch yours either. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're pregnant, I might touch your belly. I'm sorry. I'm one of those people. But don't touch my hair. I'm not a pet. Right. And so, but allow yourselves to be curious about others And for those that are, if you're among the demographic that people are very curious about, as long as they're not being condescending or disrespectful, don't allow yourself to not be offended by people's curiosity. Some of the best conversations I have had with one of my former bosses, she's not on the call today, but for those that know her, I affectionately call her Quiggles. I had the whole company change her name like to Quiggles. Everybody calls her that. And she's since retired, but Quiggles and and Quiggles is an Italian-American woman, super proud Italian-American woman. And we have shared so many stories, shared each other's music. She taught me about Boz Scaggs, and I taught her about the Wu-Tang Clan, because we allowed each other to be curious. And one thing that we started doing in the workplace is we would come up with, we would review contracts together, and we would have all these different situations. Shawntà loves Boz Scaggs. And so
standing out over here.
We would have all these different situations, and we started this thing where we would say how our people would respond. And so something, crazy would be, a customer would propose something in a contract, and I would say, boy, my people would go off on somebody for that. My people would say this. And then she would say, well, my people, the Italians would, do X, Y, and Z. And through this exchange of stories about my people, our people, we just started to learn about each other's parents and grandparents. And we've spent holidays together. She is, like the grandmother to my children, all these things, because I allowed somebody to be curious about me, right? But in a respectful way. So that can happen. It allows you to build mentors, sponsors, and allies, and just some real funny stories. I'll just tell you that part. Yeah. And so, Shawntà, you want to?
I love that. And that's, those, we could go on and on about all these agreements, right? Even this idea of curiosity. We could carve out a whole different conversation. I'm going to actually be sitting on a panel at the end of June to give space for transgender voices. And they invited me to talk about my perspectives on empathy and compassion as it relates to how we relate to the transgender community. And one of the things that I talked about with the people that are facilitating the panel is this idea of curiosity, right? And the idea that, we need to give space for it, but we also need to recognize when it's crossing into judgment, right? Because curiosity and judgment are two totally different things. But again, meditation and mindfulness gets you to the awareness. Right. So we want to be respectful of everybody's time. I am really enjoying this conversation, and I could tell by the chat that you guys are as well. I do want to pause and see if there are any questions, or if there is anyone that wants to share something that perhaps an agreement that they are thinking about, having heard Princess and I talk about our bad agreements. Is there anything that you guys want to share in terms of any enlightening thoughts that you've had as you've listened to this session?
I actually want to call on somebody, because I saw a question in the chat from Philip Ching. So Philip, could you come off of mute and just ask your question aloud? I think it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I can also go in camera as well. I was going to ask this actually just now, Princess, so thank you for throwing me in there. When we were talking about the agreements of just sort of setting boundaries and such, I have a question just for some of y'all who are a little bit more experienced than I am, because I'm a younger professional. How do you break these bad agreements when the people who enforce them typically hold a lot of power in the company, but not only the company, the industry? They are big folks in the entire industry and could derail your career growth, if I may say so.
Yeah.
You want me to take that? You got that one, Princess?
You know what? I'd love to talk to that, because I actually know Philip personally and know a lot of their experiences. And that story that I shared about that individual early in my career, Philip met that same individual in Chicago. It was crazy when we found out that we had that person in common, and she tried it with them too. And so the reality is that's scary. It is. I just want to just flat out say that it's scary, and that threat is real, that somebody who is a giant in the industry, that is connected and well known, could hate on you to a point where they could stifle your career. They could put the bad word out. They could put the bad vibe out. And here's the thing, if they're going to, just like she said those things to me and you, if they're going to, they're going to. So what's the real risk to you? She's already a hater. I mean, I just hate to, I don't want to reduce it down to something as simple, but that's what it is. For whatever reason, I don't know what's fueling her. That's why I asked her the question that she didn't answer. What are you trying to accomplish? When somebody says something that really, it shook me, it got me emotional. I'm 20 years after the fact. That brought a little bit of tear to my eye, but my lashes were gonna come off and I couldn't let her do me like that. But here's the thing, that 20 years after the fact, it still gets me, but I challenged it in that moment. And I asked the person simply and respectfully, what are you trying to accomplish with that question? And sometimes it's a matter of bringing things to a person's attention. I actually had a subsequent conversation with that same leader in the company because I resigned from the company. I resigned from her group a year later, and she couldn't understand it. She said, well, you're one of the brightest people. You're incredibly talented. And I said, thank you. I knew. All right. Cool. I said, but it's time for me to move on because I have to move on to a place where I think I can grow. And she made several comments. So you'd be surprised that if you just maintain yourself, you don't have to go off on anybody. You don't have to get revenge. You don't have to get even. The universe has a way of taking care of people and things. And we just, we moved on. I moved on from her, but I did share her. I let her know how I felt and how she made me feel. And I dare say she probably regretted some of that, but who knows, because I moved on and had a wonderful life. And that's what sometimes you got to just keep it moving.
Yeah. It takes courage. It takes courage to set boundaries, and it takes courage to be your authentic self. And courage means that sometimes you're willing to lose. Right. But you're never really losing because it's always a gain. Sometimes you just have to make room for that which is really for you. And I've had to do that several times in my career, be willing to lose in the face of my authenticity and in the face of, really what I believe in. And yeah, earlier in my career, it was more scary, but I will say, Philip, it does get easier. Right. It's like you look at older, more mature people that are just so confident in who they are. Right. They move with this energy that is sort of unstoppable. My parents they've always kind of been like that, but they're really like that now. And the more we step into that type of attitude, that type of, way of thinking and being really not just showing up, faking it till you make it, not just trying, but really being your authentic self, becoming your authentic self, it becomes really easy to see where you belong, where you're psychologically safe, and where you need to release so that you can actually move into the spaces that support you and will encourage you and will uplift you. And it's even easier today because the organizations that are not supporting authenticity, that's a risk of being a headline. Right. We see what's happening, I'm not even gonna throw out any names, but we see what's happening in the tech space. We see what's happening to all these organizations that are in trouble, right? For creating environments that don't promote the psychological safety of everybody. Right. And so thank you to everyone that is collectively working towards that. All of the people that are on these calls that lead employee resource groups, that are in political spaces, that are, changing society. Right. That's why we're here today. We're here to change society so that it is much more supportive of who we are globally and not just supportive of one group. And so just rest in awareness that things are changing. Right. And we have to celebrate that change, but still be willing to stand up for ourselves when we need to. So hopefully that answered your question, Philip. We're going to make sure that we share our information, I guess, in the chat. I want to make sure we have we might go over 5 minutes. So if you're able to stay on for 5 minutes for the meditation, please do, because it'll really help you. But as we get ready to close this session out, Princess, is there anything that you want to leave with the people? Do you want to share how they can reach you, and just any final thoughts? 1 or 2 minutes, 1 minute. Let's just say 1 minute.
Sure. I'll make it super quick. So first and foremost, I want you all to download that workbook that we put in the chat. So Shawntà, maybe if you can just drop it one more time. And in that, you're going to find these models. You're going to find exactly what we talked about, how you break these bad agreements. And I want you to dare yourself. And DARE is an acronym, stands for how you define the bad agreement. You want to define where it came from, who told you, because you might have to have a conversation with them to break that agreement. My grandmother's not here anymore for me to have that conversation, but I've broken that. A stands for analyze, where you analyze the impact that the thoughts are having on you and your behavior, and also how your workplace perpetuates these bad agreements. R is for reframe your thinking. Take some of these practical steps that you've heard even from some of our anecdotes. The workbook is loaded with ideas. And then E is for embark. Embark on creating new agreements. You have to do this. It takes a lot of courage. You might lose in the immediate moment, but you have to win and you have to get ahead. The way that I help businesses today is that I help them develop wellness-centered risk management competencies. I design all kinds of wonderful programs, and my contact information is in that book. 1 minute flat, bam. Shawntà.
All right, good job, good job. Princess and I met in speech class, so this is so apropos that we're here today. I have on the screen, I just wanted to show on the screen the visual that Princess was describing, the DARE, define, analyze, reframe, and embark. And just to give my final thoughts and tell you how you can reach me, my company is called Mindful Culture Creators. That's the name of my website as well. It's also in the workbook. And I help organizations, bring sessions like this to the workplace, bring sessions that represent authenticity, that bring faces that look a little different. I am a meditation and mindfulness thought leader, teacher, and expert. And I, having been in this space, there are not a lot of faces that look like mine, right? And there are actually not a lot of voices that are connecting meditation and mindfulness to the corporate space and explaining how it is an enabler of you accelerating the achievement of your strategic goals. And so I, have a business where I teach classes and facilitate workshops and build communities, build communities like this so that folks can have safe spaces to actually learn, unpack, and do these things, actually have space to do these things that we're sharing on the screen today. So we will certainly be hosting more sessions like this. And we will make sure that we keep you guys informed. The goal is going to be to host sessions like this at least once a month. And we'll always open and close. We'll kind of run it the same way. We'll open it with meditation and we're going to close it with a longer practice. So with that being said, and we'll make sure, Tanika, I'll make sure that we send out the link to the actual session, the recorded session as well. So with that being said, I ask you to just sort of ready your minds and your thoughts for meditation. I'm actually going to stop my video just to ensure that I have no bandwidth issues. Feel free to come off camera. This is your safe space for the next 5 minutes. Give yourself until 12:05, so really 7 minutes, to just experience a moment of mindfulness. Mindfulness is extremely powerful. Studies show that with 8 weeks of meditation training, the parts of the brain that control your stress response, your amygdala, it shrinks in size. And the parts of the brain that control your decision-making, your memory, your learning, the prefrontal cortex, it thickens. So what you're getting ready to experience is literally changing the neuroplasticity of your mind. And if you do it on a consistent basis, starting with just 5 minutes a day, you can literally transform your entire life. And that's not just my words, but those are the words of many researchers, and it's really meant for you to be experienced. So with that being said, if your eyes are open, I invite you to close your eyes. And as you simply just breathe on your own, no special way to breathe, I want you to just notice what it feels like to breathe. Notice your thoughts. What are you thinking right now? Many people have a misunderstanding that meditation is to silence the mind, but that is impossible. The mind was literally designed to think. Simply honor that. Perhaps show gratitude for your thinking mind. And maybe for the next few minutes, just pick a thing, one thing that you want to focus your attention on. The breath is always easy because it is ever present. Get curious about your breath. Perhaps notice what it feels like in your body to breathe. What parts of the body move as you breathe? What you're doing right now is training your awareness. And science tells us that about 50% of the time our mind wanders, meaning that we are not aware. And we simply just need to train ourselves to be aware, to notice. So perhaps your mind is wandering right now, thinking about all the things that are happening in the world, or perhaps thinking about the thing that you have to do next, thing that you're missing out on by being here today. And when you notice that that is where your mind has gone, claim your power and recenter your thoughts on your breath, or on my voice, or on the thing that you chose to be the focus of your meditation today. Over and over, the mind wanders and we bring it back. The mind wanders and we bring it back. That is our power as human beings. How does your body feel? What does your breathing feel like? Do you feel restless? Do you feel still? Are you feeling some emotions or anxiety? If you had to name it, what would you call it? Just notice. Noticing that the entire time the breath is still present. Perhaps even place your hands on your stomach to just simply feel physically what breathing feels like. Understanding that with every breath we breathe, we are granted an opportunity to live. Rest in gratitude at the magnitude of that thought. Your mind is wandering, just simply bring it back to this present moment. Perhaps even invoking sensations and thoughts of gratitude for giving yourself permission to be here today, to enjoy a moment of stillness. And as we bring this meditation to a close, I invite you to take one more deep breath in through the nose and out the mouth. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And hopefully notice an elevation in your mood, notice an elevation in your thoughts. I feel the positive energy just from this virtual space. As again, I came into this space feeling a little down, you're right, for some obvious reasons. But I did the things that I need to do to bring my spirit up, which was actually sending messages of positivity and inspiration to everyone in my community and network. So we really, really appreciate you being here today. We had, I think, as many as 52 people on this call. Definitely shattered my expectations. And we'll be bringing more content to you. So please stay tuned. Follow us on social media. We'll make sure that we share all of our information on how you can contact us, because Princess and I are embarking on journeys to help change this world with our voices. with our talents and with our gifts, and we would love your support. So if your organizations need people like us, right, need people like us to teach risk management in a different way, need people like us to teach mindfulness and meditation, contact us. And I see Yoli, did you want to say something, Yoli?
No, I just want to say thank you for a great session.
Thank you so much.
I'm just emotional. It was fantastic. Oh,
Wow. We
thank
appreciate your presence, and you guys have a wonderful day. I'm going to hit the stop recording button.